Welcome to Reco12. I'm Justin B., your host and a child of an all-powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery one day at a time. Reco12 is all about exploring the common threads of addiction and sharing tools and hope from those on a similar path. We gain and gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers are members of various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery no matter our affliction. Today is meeting number 311 of the Reco12 speaker meeting. Today's speaker is Samantha M, a first-time Reco12 speaker. I'm excited to hear from her today. Her topic that she shared with us earlier is turning turning red flags green, easier read than said. And I look forward to hearing that message here in a few minutes. First, for just a little bit of business before I turn the floor over to her. Reco12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, listen more, connect more, or just hang out and learn and grow with us, you can check out those other podcasts that you can find at Reco12.com. I also have a quick announcement in regards to that. A couple of our Reco12 podcasts, the Noodle It Out with Nikki M and the Big Book Roundtable podcasts, we've moved those to a new platform called Red Circle for our base. If you don't listen to these podcasts already on like Apple or Spotify or Amazon Music or YouTube, you'll find them there at the link in the chats. I'll put that link in the show note and in the chat of the meeting. And if you listen on the big platforms above, there will be no change. You'll never notice anything. But the flagship Reco12 meetings podcast, this one here, will still be hosted on Buzzsprout. All right. Reco12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission. Thanks to all of our spearheads, past, present, and future, and a special thanks this week to Jessica. Thank you for your generous donation. If you out there also feel the desire to become a spearhead and support this cause, visit Reco12.com/support or click on the links that I will post here in the show notes and the chat for either one-time or monthly donation options. Your support, not just financially, but especially with your word of mouth, makes a difference in keeping us able to share these messages of recovery. We look forward each meeting to receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'm going to introduce our guest speaker for today, Samantha M, and give just a little background on her. Samantha's sobriety date is September 5th of 1995. Her home group is in Santa Barbara, California, as Bill sees it on Saturday mornings. And just really excited to hear from her. Take it away, Samantha. The floor is yours.
Thanks, guys. Hi, family. I'm Sam. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks for having me. Liza, thank you for tracking me down. Thanks for being so patient. And Justin as well. Thanks for your service. What a beautiful thing you guys have got here. So welcome if you're new or used or resuming. I'm not really sure where to start. I know this isn't sort of the classic format of what it was like and what happened and what it's like now, but I'll give you a little bit of background, qualify a little bit. Suffice it to say that I'm an alcoholic that slams methamphetamine, which makes me a very busy alcoholic that gets nothing done, and I'm very scandalous in the process. I started getting loaded rather late in life. I was 9. I was in 4th grade. I probably could have used a drink a lot sooner, but it's kind of hard to score with like a Partridge Family lunch pail or whatever it was I was carrying at the time. So my first drink came disguised in the form of marijuana. I was over at a girlfriend's house who had older brothers, and they were selling weed, and I was watching them smoke weed in this beautiful glass bong with butterflies and flowers and all kinds of things in the 70s. And, I remember watching them just fill that bong and clear the chamber and I was in. I hadn't even smoked any yet, and I couldn't wait to try that whole thing. And I did smoke pot that day, and I remember eating a lot of almond roca candy and falling off their roof, and I couldn't wait to do it again. I'm the youngest of 4. I'm the only one that was adopted. They said that they wanted to have 3 kids and adopt 3 kids, but after Samantha, that was enough. So there was sort of this story of my life that was being created. None of it which makes me an alcoholic. Alcohol, I think, is what made me an alcoholic. You have to drink it. But certainly there was a story of my life. And I'm a therapist today and a teacher, and I recognize that there are a few things that every alcoholic I've ever come into contact with has in common. And that's a struggle with self-esteem, a struggle with feeling good enough. Now, plenty of people have that struggle and are not alcoholics, but I definitely recognize that as something that alcoholics have, and incredibly sensitive people and so on and so forth. But there's no doubt in my mind after this many days in a row of recovery that there's something that is lacking in a lot of human beings that we are seeking, which is a sense of belonging, which is some sort of spiritual connection, and Carl Jung and Bill Wilson spoke a lot about this, and I think that there's a beautiful recipe that we have been given through the 12 steps that really allow us, in my opinion, allow me to remove everything that stands in the way between me and my creator. And it really is the kind of thing, for lack of a better word, and it kind of brings me to tears. The older I get, I know the more sensitive I'm getting too, but also I think the more grateful I'm getting is that, it's like the 12 steps are walking me home. You know what I mean? And they've been walking me back home internally for a lot of days in a row now. And I think that's what you do for me as well. I think that the members of Alcoholics Anonymous often are my bridge. And I'll speak a little bit more about that, just of what's kind of going on in my life today. But suffice it to say, they put me in my first drug and alcohol rehab center when I was 17 years old. So I didn't have a very long, illustrious drinking career. Um, I remember one of my first meetings in there, they brought in from hospitals and institutions. And the first message I remember getting was that maybe I was sick and not bad. And for an alcoholic who really thought that she was evil or bad or broken on some level, that was a huge message of hope, even though I didn't have the vocabulary or the understanding. But that's really what it was, is that I remember hearing that maybe I was sick and not bad. And there was hope in that. I stayed sober for 6.5 years, and then I quit going to meetings. I relapsed in a rather dramatic fashion, as sometimes we are akin to do, you know what I mean? And ran the streets for quite some time, and was able to have sort of a moment of clarity in August of 1995, and was able to get myself here to Santa Barbara and start the process of recovery again. The topic that I had spoken to Liza about, or whatever it is, I'm no longer willing to spray paint my red flags green. And what does that mean? It means that on some level, I am aware intuitively of red flags that pop up in my life. Like I go to meet that guy or that person or whatever that is gonna fix me or complete me or something. And there's a little hesitation, you know what I mean? Like, well, he doesn't really treat his mom that well. Ah, that's no big deal. I'll change him. And I bust out my big green spray paint can and I go, shh, that ain't red. I'll fix it. And then sure enough, some kind of, tragedy happens and I'm back and doing a fourth step, wondering what's my part, when in the reality is that I did not honor my value system. And a huge part, I think, of the fourth step and the sex inventory is, at one part in the sex inventory, it asks us, what should we have done instead? And where were we selfish? And what are our ideals? Suppose we fall short of our chosen ideals and stumble. Does it mean that we're going to drink? Some people tell us so, but that's only a half truth. It depends. What does it depend on? It depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry and we have an honest desire to have our creator bring us to something new, right? Change us and bring us to better things, we believe we will have learned our lesson and we will be forgiven. If we do not change, I love ifs. See, this program is for the fellowship is for fun and for free. But the program, our recovery, is conditional. Not until you do this can you have this. Unless you do this, you can't have this. If you do this, you can have this. It is very conditional, right? As it should be, because freedom isn't free. Freedom costs, right? So spray painting my red flags green when I start to look at, if I'm not sorry and my conduct continues to harm others, I'm quite sure to drink. Well, I was years and years sober before I had a sponsor that actually asked me not only to set forth my ideal of how I want to be in relationships, in all relationships, not just sexual relationships, how I want to be in life. How do I want to behave? What kind of person do I want to be? Not only that, but also what kind of people do I want in my life? So when I'm starting to set my ideal today, I'm not only discussing how I want to be, I am honestly assessing, who do I want in my life today? What is healthy for me? And, I work with people all day long where, I say to them, how can I help? And they tell me what's going on in their life. And I say, what do you want? What do you truly want? What are the barriers to that want? And how do we remove the barriers? Right. And so a little discussion, and then I'll open up for questions. I don't want to spray paint my red flags green. And the only reason I do spray paint my red flags green is usually from a character defect of some kind. Now, my belief, it's just my opinion, right, is, as the book says, the 12 and 12 talks about the chief activator of all my character defects is self-centered fear. It's in step 7. So nowhere in the big book does it say to me to specifically work on a character defect. In fact, after step 6, the 7th step prayer says what? My creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Remove from me every defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. It doesn't say work on a specific character defect. It says, my creator, take all of me. Just take all of me. And that's the prayer. And that's the thing I'd really like to share with you today. Again, just my opinion based on my experience and the way that I interpret the 12 and 12 and the literature is that we are, here we are faced with these character defects, which, let's be honest, guys, the character defects, in my opinion, are actually rooted in something necessary and divine, meaning every single character defect that I have, now check this out in your own life, if I really explore it, it started with an instinct. As the 12 and 12 talks about, these are instincts. The need to, create food, shelter, clothing, relationships, reputation. These are all instincts of a human being that are God-given, surely good and God-given. What happens is that my instincts run astray. My instincts, because of self-centered fear, start to show up like instincts on steroids. Do you know what I mean? Like all of a sudden, what started as watchfulness, vigilance, carefulness has now turned into terror. What has originated in love, kindness, wanting to be accepted, wanting to connect and accept, has now turned into like this needy, codependent, like, fix me. You know what I mean? It's like, here's the thing. The difficulty with getting rid of character defects, when there is still value to them, it's nearly impossible. And because I believe that my character defects are rooted in something necessary and valuable, will I ever be completely free of the character defect? Not unless I am free of the fear. Now, that prompts a whole nother question, which is it possible to live a fearless life? I don't know that it is, because fear is something fairly necessary. It's a survival technique. So what I strive for then is courage. And courage is taking action while still being afraid. Courage requires, for me, something more than faith. Courage requires trust. And I think that there is a difference between faith and trust. And if you're new, faith is where we begin. Faith is a belief in something unseen, unheard, unfelt, recognizable perhaps. But trust is not the same thing. Trust is an action that's actually based on a history of like, I can trust this. I mean, if Justin, where do you live? May I ask?
Absolutely. I live in Spokane, Washington.
Okay. So if I were to ask Justin, can you get me from my house in Santa Barbara to your house in Spokane? And he says, I could do it. I could have faith that he could get me there. But until I get in the frickin' car and show up to his front door, then I trust him. Like, yep, this guy definitely knew how to get me to Spokane. Do you see the difference? Faith is, I believe he could because he's probably made the trip or he can Google it or whatever. But trust is getting in the frickin' car and following his direction. You know what I mean? So there's a big difference. I I would love to talk to you guys, and I know I'm probably talking about a bunch of stuff, but I don't know, it's like a podcast, and I don't know, I feel like I could go a little bit off the reservation. So I don't know if this is too much for you. I'm sorry. I may not be your flavor, and forgive me, but I'm sure there'll be another awesome podcast next week. But just to wrap up with you, the difference, in my opinion, between sobriety and recovery is like the difference between relief and freedom. And for those of you that have heard me before, I use the example of relief being like, those button pushers in your life, those sons of bitches that push your buttons all the time. Relief would be like cutting off their fingers. You know what I mean? Like whack, done, whack. But it's a never-ending job because the button pushers keep having kids that turn into button pushers, and it's like it's a never-ending job to get rid of these freaking button pushers. You know what I mean? But that's relief. For 4 minutes, I'm like, done, you're out of here. You know what I mean? I'm amputating. So relief is cutting off the button pusher's fingers. Freedom is removing my buttons. Freedom is removing my buttons. God, Sam, how do I do that? Well, much like I discussed a few minutes ago, I think my buttons are my character defects. My buttons are activated by self-centered fear. So I have to make a new relationship with fear. And for me, that really requires sometimes a pause and an assessment of my relationship with my creator. I have to make a new relationship with death. I have to make a new relationship with all the things I'm afraid of. It's so interesting how my ego will say to me, oh man, you're screwed this time. This is really bad. And intellectually, I'd be like, I kind of have been here before, like financial fear, fear of loneliness, fear of not being okay, not being able to do something, not being good enough. And I've walked through enough stuff to be like, we've done that. Hello, fear. Hello, darkness, my old friend. You know what I mean? Like, we know each other well. Come sit next to me. You know what I mean? And that's sort of, and again, I don't do this perfectly at all, guys. I'm just sharing with you, like, here's some of my solutions in sobriety that I'm struggling with right now. And one of them is I almost like want to spoon my fear. You know what I mean? I just be like, come on, come on. Having compassion for all the sides of me that are still so offensive to me in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe I'm 29 and a half years sober and I'm still getting scared over stuff that is like, I've walked through thousands of days of stuff, but rather than beat myself up, and maybe this is the only progress I have that to show you is like, today, I don't talk to myself as hatefully as I used to. I used to be like, get up, get up, get up. God, do you know It is 8 o'clock. Do you know how much life has already gone on? Do you know how many people right now are like killing it? They're just kicking ass. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And it didn't actually get me out of bed. It just made me feel more ashamed. And so today, here's how I talk to myself. Come on, Sammy. 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 Come on, girl. Come on, girl. Come on, girl. Like, if you get up, we could probably wear the purple shoes. You'd love your purple shoes. You want to wear your purple shoes? We could do that. And if we can take care of that, we could probably get a frozen yogurt later. Do you want to get a frozen yogurt? You want to get a mani-pedi? Do you want to? It's like it's just I'm no longer my worst enemy. I still struggle, but I also am getting better at asking for help. I'm also getting better at sitting with the pain. So grief has been a big issue for me over the last couple of years. And it used to be so like my enemy. And today I really am just trying to be with it. I think that I'm raised in a culture that tells me I should be over it, right? Whatever it is. You know, my parents and I had an amazing relationship. It was incredibly, it was incredibly adversarial. And then when I got into recovery, they got into recovery, and they had just an amazing Al-Anon program. And I was by their side when they died, and I was, I'm the drug addict, alcoholic with the criminal record, and I am the one, and I've been to the psych ward, and I was the only kid, able to really care for them. And it changed our life. You know what I mean? And I am forever changed. And they've been gone for a few years, and I'm still not fine. I'm okay. It's like you can live a beautiful life as an amputee. You can live a great life without a left arm, but you don't have a left arm. It's just that's the way of it. And so I'm managing this in the best way I know how. And sometimes it's messy, and sometimes it makes people uncomfortable, and sometimes it's inconvenient, but it's a beautiful life. And part of life is loss. And I'm learning how to love and keep loving, even though I'm really afraid to lose you. So I don't know. I know I was all over the place. I hope you got something out of that. I'm truly honored that you let me share some of me with you today. And thanks for letting me share.
Sam, that was beautiful, and it was perfect. You did a great job. Thank you so much. Higher power just stepped in and made things amazing, and great share. And I've written down several questions here, and a reminder to our live audience, if you have a question for Sam, please type it in the chat. If you want to remain anonymous and don't want me to read your first name, direct message it to me, and I'll keep it anonymous. If you're okay with me reading your first name, just send it to me in the chat, and I'll do that. I'm going to start off with one of the last things you said, Sam. You said, you know what? I'm just okay. I'm fine. Things are a mess, but I'm fine. One of the lines in the long version of the Serenity Prayer is reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy forever in the next. But that reasonably happy just rang out to me as you shared that. Talk to me a little bit more about I'm fine. I'm reasonably happy. And I guess the expectations that need to be quelled in that search for
Managed.
reasonable happiness.
Yeah, I think as I get older too, I am, and again, we're dealing with semantics, I think here, but I'm kind of a word person. I kind of love them, and I'll Google them, and I'll do the etymology of them, and what's the ancient Greek and Latin and everything. And I think that as I get older, I strive more for contentment than happiness. For me, happiness can have a little mania to it sometimes. It's like, I want ice creams and orgasms all the time. You know what I mean? It's like, so for me, the okayness is almost, I think, a testament in some ways to the emotional balance that I strive for. I'm not sure if that's answering it, but I think so that's one aspect, is that happiness is not necessarily what I strive for as much as contentment, peace, and managing the expectations, or managing my perception of judgment on that, judgment by others. Again, we are these kind of machines as human beings who we do compare, we do compete. That's another survival technique, actually, that's not going anywhere, but it can be a problem for us. So I think the best I can do is to catch it when I'm comparing myself to you and saying, I should be as happy as Liza, or my life should look like, right? You've heard the old saying is like comparing my insides to your outsides. I just have to be very, very careful of that. And there's my own work that needs to be done in order to not have you push my buttons. Essentially, that's the process of removing the buttons, so to speak, that's my internal work. Did that kind of answer your question, Justin?
Love it. Beautiful.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. All right.
Thank
We
you.
have a few questions that have come in from our live audience. First one is from an
Awesome.
anonymous listener. This person says, what are some ways that you suggest people holding tightly to the delusion of control can reach for this unknown path through discomfort in the plans and designs of a power greater than self?
Read it again. Slow.
Yeah. What are some ways that you suggest people that hold tightly to the delusion of control can
Stop right
reach?
there.
Yes.
Read it again.
Yeah. So, what are some ways that you suggest to people who are holding tightly to the delusion of control can reach for the unknown path of discomfort in their own plans and
Okay.
designs to a power greater than self?
Will it be offensive if I say oversimplistically, how do I loosen the grip? I don't know who wrote it.
Beautiful.
Anyways,
Yeah, have
okay,
at it.
I'm going to speak to that. And if whoever wrote that feels like I'm dismissing it and oversimplifying it, please get my number from Liza or Justin and text me, and I'm happy to anyone who wants my number, get it from these two and text me. Don't call, text me. But anyways, again, grasping. I love the way you worded it, which is like holding on to the delusion of control. I could not have said it better. It's a total, there is a delusion of control in some areas, right? So the first thing I do is I have to explore, what are you afraid of? Like that's my biggest thing, is I have to explore the fear. So obviously it would help me to know the specifics of your particular situation. But if we're talking about how do we loosen the grip on the delusion of control in order to reach into the unknown, that's very scary, I say a practice of loosening the grip. So loosening the grip doesn't look like letting go. Like, let go, Sam. Let go, Sam. I can't let go. Loosen the grip. So I almost visually create space where my creator can work with me. I'm not letting go of anything. One of the things that really annoyed me, I've done 4 steps on this, is like, let go and let God. You just let go and let God. And I'm like, I can take direction. I am letting go. It's not working. It's not working because I'm still afraid. So I have to find this compassion of myself. I either get professional help, I ask a friend, a bridge, I go inside, I do my meditation, huge, huge meditation. If you're new or used or years sober and you have not developed a meditation practice, in my opinion, that is not recovery. Recovery incorporates a meditation practice. They did it since the beginning of the book, and they did it because all of the literature they were studying from the Oxford group and the Washingtonians and everything else was dealing with a meditation practice. So it's huge because, look, guys, the only place I suffer is here. The only thing I need to train is here. Long-term recovery, and I think the attainment of peace. Notice I didn't say the sustained attainment of peace because I haven't gotten there yet, but like longer moments of contentment, in my opinion, as a therapist, as a teacher, as a recovery person with years sober, it has to do with a skill. Long-term recovery is a skill. It's a skill. What do you need to practice a skill? A book, a class, and a teacher. I want to learn Chinese. I don't sit in my bedroom and go, I want to learn Chinese. I want to learn Chinese. I get a book, a class, and a teacher. And then what do? I go to class. What do they do all day in class? They practice. They practice. They practice. So I ask you, what do you want? How do you want to feel in your skin? If you tell me, I want to feel more peaceful, I'm like, then let's get a book, a class, and a teacher. Find someone in your life that seems to have some peace. Ask them what they're doing. I will guarantee you they have some kind of a practice. Unless they have a lobotomy, which is awesome. I would like one, and I'll be the first one in line when they come back into fashion. But anyway, until then, I got to manage this shit up here. And to manage this shit, I need some help. And so I find people who have a lot of stuff up here who are managing it and who are finding a way of riding the waves of this thing called life.
Love that. What does your meditation practice typically look like, Sam?
Okay, so every morning there's a series of things that I'm doing. Sometimes I'm doing a class or a course. I love the Insight Timer app. I am also a meditation teacher. I have a couple of meditations on that. It's not self-promotion. It costs nothing, whatever. But I love Insight Timer. And there's courses on there and stuff like that. I'm really big into the language of letting go and codependent issues and stuff like that. And then I have a string of like affirmations. So pretty much like from the moment I wake up to the moment I come here, which is basically my office, most of my sessions are online. I am in it, so to speak. So I'll start with prayer and meditation. Usually the prayer is incredibly simplistic. I open my eyes and I'm like, help me, basically, God, help me help your kids. Help me do what you need me to do. Help me love myself and love others the way that you love me. And then I'll do meditation, usually about 10 minutes, sometimes 15, depends on how much time I have. And then I start my affirmations, which is like 35 minutes of different affirmations. I have like a little playlist, and I get in the shower, my affirmations are playing, and I'm like jamming to them. I'm swimming in this stuff. And listen, I used to poo-poo affirmations like crazy, like nice for you, great, And then kind of I woke up, you know what I mean? Like I got a master's degree, I started studying, the brain and what happens and the neuronet transmitters and how they connect and the stuff that we say to ourselves and how that resonates and the amygdala and so there's a lot of stuff that's just scientifically proven where the brain eats this stuff up, and it's very important. So from the time I open my eyes to the time I sit here, I am swimming in some form of centering, surrender, and affirmations.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that, Sam. Really appreciate it. The analogy you drew to the button pushers and the relief you get from cutting off their fingers versus the freedom of removing the buttons really rang out to me and a lot of our audience here. I've gotten several questions about this.
Awesome.
And these people are aware of the people who push their buttons. However, the buttons are still being pushed, and I try and pray them away, say that I will be done. How are the resentments and anger just still there? How the heck do I remove those buttons like you're talking about?
So the first thing is to really understand that what is activating those buttons is fear. So, and I do this all day long with people, but it's like the first thing we look at is, so what's the button that's being pushed, right? I don't know if anybody wants to actually share a particular, but we'll use an example. Like, mom is pushing my buttons. Well, what is she saying? How does she make you feel? So let's say, for example, they are making us feel not good enough. I feel judged. I feel less than. I feel, criticized. So in the fourth step, and the beauty of the fourth step is unpalatable as this might sound, really untasty here, is the beauty of the fourth column in the fourth step. Accountability is freedom. See, blame is not freedom. It feels good in the moment. It's like that 4-minute rush of self-righteous anger, but it's not freedom. Freedom is realistic expectations. When the fourth column asks us to look at 4 areas, right? Where am I selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and afraid? In selfishness, I put a little subheading under selfishness, unrealistic expectations. How many of your resentments today, as you think about them, towards someone is something that is repeated, meaning, and again, she's pissing me off again. She did it again. He did it again, which tells me they're acting exactly the way they always act every day, all day long, Monday through Friday, 365, including Dodger games and Super Bowl. It's like they're assholes or whatever. They're unhappy. And I'm unhappy that they're unhappy. And I keep fighting the fact that they are who they are. That's insane. But when it comes down to what really needs to happen, which is possibly a reevaluation as to whether or not I can have a relationship with this person, that's when it gets dicey. Because you guys, I hope you hear this. In my opinion, love is unconditional, but relationships are not. Love is unconditional. Relationships have rules. The rules usually have to do with your value system. If you and I do not share a similar value system, it may be a deal breaker. It depends on the values. If our value system includes things like religion, politics, sex, art, music, food, animals, dancing, lots of different stuff, right? Lots of different stuff, our values. If I really love Mexican food and Liza really loves Chinese food, I don't know if it's a deal breaker. We're just going to have to manage the fact that when we go out, we got to go to a place that has both, right? Or if the only thing that she and I share are Mexican food, then after we eat Mexican food, cook Mexican food, talk about Mexican food, buy Mexican food, that's pretty much all we got. So the level of intimacy that two people have are directly related to how many values they share. So far, so good. More values, more intimacy. The only requirements for a healthy relationship are 2 things: trust and respect. Love is not one of them. How do I know? Because we have lots of relationships where love is not a factor. But in every relationship, trust and respect are a must. Trust and respect breed safety. Safety breeds vulnerability. Vulnerability breeds intimacy. If you don't have a close relationship with someone, I would probably guess it's because you do not have mutual trust and respect in areas that you need to have it. So I'm not sure if that answered your question about the buttons, but you have to understand that I have to start taking responsibility for what I want in my life. And I have to stop expecting you to give it to me if you are sharing with me in some direct or indirect way your value system, which means we don't share the same perimeters. I want to share this with you. Hold on one sec. Woo. So in language of letting go, right? Language of letting go, it's daily meditations for codependence. My favorite one is August 20th. And August 20th entry is called Honesty in Relationships. And I'll let you guys read it. Language of Letting Go, August 20th, okay? But it talks about the parameters in which I would like to play with you. Please tell me the parameters you'd like to play so that I can know whether or not I'd like to play that game. Tell me the rules, and then I will decide if I can play. Why we don't have this conversation the minute a friendship or a relationship of some kind, or even a family relationship, people don't want to have this conversation because they know internally on some level, we don't share a value. I'm going to have to take action on that. And if I take action on that, it's going to mean like I have to I can't be in a relationship with my own mother. Well, you're not. If you don't trust and respect, I don't call it a relationship. I call it a connection. But I'm not in relationship with someone I don't trust or respect. So then the next question is, I have to explore, why am I hanging on to something that does not serve me? Sorry, that was very long.
No, but it was beautiful, and I, I've got several takeaways from that that I'm just gonna have on my wall of quotes here, and take. I'm teaching a class here to a bunch of young single adults on dating and interpersonal relationships starting this next Tuesday, and some of
Oh, I
these
got a
things
ton of stuff for you, Justin.
about that concept of tell me the rules of the game in order to play is
Yeah.
powerful, very
Yes. And then the
powerful.
person will tell you the rules and you don't want to play by the rules, but you're so afraid to be alone. You're like, shh,
Yeah. Oh,
shh.
painting that red flag green.
Sure, I'll play that, of course. And inside you're like, oh, I don't know. Well, maybe he won't remember, or maybe she won't, it's like they just shared your values, their values with you. It's not going anywhere. Yeah, but I can change them. No.
Uh, that's
Anyway,
powerful, powerful
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Now let's take this relationship of trust and respect and turn it the other way. What if can I have a relationship that gives people trust and respect when they don't have that from me in return, or do I need to just step away in those places too?
Let me tell you what I heard you say. Can I give people trust and respect that don't respect and trust me?
Yeah.
You tell me.
Well, I think I can. I don't know that I could trust them. I could respect them.
In what, and again, we're talking
Yeah.
about pockets here because,
Hmm.
and I teach this class, right? So we've had lots of discussions about this. I had one student ask me one time, is it possible to trust someone and not respect them, or respect them and not trust them? And I said to the student, you tell me.
Mm.
Really think about it. If I trust you in some areas, strike that. If I don't trust you in some areas, that means I think I don't respect you in that area. If what you're saying to me, Justin, is that trust is something that you respect, having trust for someone or trustworthiness is a respectable value to you, then in some ways, you're answering the question. If I don't trust you in this area, I do not respect you in this area. Correct? Now
Yeah.
let's flip it. If I don't respect you in this area, can I trust you in that area?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So the struggle is when people come to me, which usually it looks like this. I I love my dad. I don't trust him in some areas and I don't respect him in some areas. I'd like to feel closer to him. And I say to them, then you're going to have a conversation about what you need from him in order to trust and respect him. And maybe he's going to say no. Maybe he's going to say yes. We don't know. But that's kind of the problem. The issue here is we have to explore the parameters in which we operate. The biggest thing about not having intimacy is acknowledging the fact that the intimacy is not there because I don't feel safe with you. I have to, I have one mantra I want to share with you guys I use this in couples counseling all the time too, is like, the mantra is, Justin, how can I love you better? Show me how I can love you better. Now, here's the thing. When Justin tells me his parameters, it doesn't mean I can do it, right? So just because I ask you, please show me how to love you better, that is not my promise to love you better. That is me genuinely inquiring, what do you need from me to feel loved by me? When you tell me what you need, I may not be able to do it because it may not be in alignment with my values. I also will promise to tell you what I would like from you in order to feel loved by you. I do not expect that means I'm going to get it. It's a conversation with two people contributing lovingly to the truth, to decide whether or not to decide on a proper course of conduct for this relationship.
Man, such good stuff. I'm definitely going to be sharing this in that young single adult class. A lot of this stuff is just so powerful as I and seeing it from a different perspective than I've ever seen it before. And on
Thank
that
you.
note, Sam, you have been sober. You've been in the rooms for 29 and a half years sober, and I think in the rooms longer than that because from your story you talked about that. Tell me something that you have learned in the last year or so of your recovery that you would likely never have learned had you not remained in the rooms and in active recovery.
Well, I think, like I sort of said in the pitch, was, the thing I'm kind of swimming in right now is making this new relationship with grief, I think. Um, I can only imagine what my life would be like um, with the loss of these two incredibly important people in my life and me not being in recovery. I can't, I don't think, I mean, first of all, I really don't think I'd be alive. I don't, I'm kind of a wanna dyer from way back, you know what I mean? Like, I always kind of joke with people, if you don't think about killing yourself at least once a week, like, I don't even want to hang out with you, you know what I mean? Like, you're not paying attention, you know what I mean? Come on now. Um, I'm not like a morning person of like, I love the birds and shit, I'm still struggling with like, oh man, 10 o'clock for this podcast. What's going on? You know what I mean? It's just, I'm a night person. What can I say? You know what I mean? Trust me, tons of judgment because real adults get up at 6 in the morning and like go to the gym and stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh shit. You know what I mean? So, I got stuff, whatever. But I don't know, Justin. I don't know how to even answer that. The thing that I'm swimming in the most, like I said, is managing this grief in a way that allows me to still connect to life. I tend to isolate a lot. My the work that I do for a living, it requires, I joke with people, I have this sign outside my door that says treatment in progress, please do not disturb. And that's when I'm in session, that's what's going on. When I'm done for the day, that sign stays on the door like 4 more hours. You know what I mean? I I I have to take care of myself. What I carry and what I hold for other people, and it's not, I'm grateful. It's awesome. I love my job and everything, but I need to take care of myself around that stuff. And so there comes a time at the end of the day where I don't want to talk and I don't want to listen. You know what I mean? I just want to watch some sports. You know what I mean? I just want to I just want to pet my animals, take care of me. So I think that there's a lot of things I'm learning of how to love myself, how to love you better, and how to really navigate the waves of it being hard sometimes to be happy, joyous, and free.
Mm. Such powerful stuff, Sam. Really appreciate it. I've got another
Thank you.
question for you. Early in your, about midway through your talk, you said something like you love the ifs of life. And I want to follow up with that a little bit. What is the difference between the if then that relationship and the what if, which is driven by fear? Because I mean, when you said I love the ifs, immediately
Ooh.
my mind went to I can't live in the ifs because then I'm living in fear. So talk me through that,
Well,
the
let me just be
difference there.
clear. I think what I was referring to, and
Mhm.
I think it's a different question, or I'd love to answer the question. Don't know if I can, but what I was referring to is whenever I go through the book with sponsees, I always have them highlight until, only, until, and unless. Only, until, unless, and if, basically. Why is that? Because the book is filled with conditions for requirements for long-term recovery. So sometimes I think I meet people who are under the impression like that this is for fun and for free. And it's like, no, it's not. It's filled with, you know, not until you do this, you can't. If you're painstaking about this phase of your development, then you can have the promises. Okay. Until we admit complete defeat, we can't really move on through the steps. unless you really, uh, whatever, you get my point. It's like
Yeah.
only if, right? So in the 12 and 12, it's like, who cares to admit complete defeat? Practically no one, of course. Every natural instinct cries out against the idea of personal powerlessness. It is truly awful to admit that, glass in hand, I have warped my mind into such an obsession for destructive drinking that only an act of providence, capital P, will remove it from me. That means fucking only. Sorry. It's like, I'm really passionate about that because I spent a lot of time as a 17-year-old arguing with the fact that I was an alcoholic. I can't be an alcoholic. I'm too young to be an alcoholic. Alcoholics are old men in trench coats drinking out of brown paper bags. They're not, 17-year-old cheerleaders at Arcadia High School in California. It's like, what? You know? So I had to have an education, and I'm so grateful for the giants that educated me to show me what it looks like to be powerless at 17. So I think that's what I was referring to, is only if you do this can you have what we're offering you. This program is conditional, based on your surrender, your willingness, your humility, your courage, your thoroughness.
Yeah. And this is where the what if comes. Well, what if that promised blessing result doesn't happen if I do this? And that's where that question for me comes in.
That's living in the contempt prior to investigation kind of thing, right? It's just like, yeah, good point. What if? So whenever you're ready to, and that's why alcoholism, or I love this. I suffer from alcoholism, and sometimes that includes drinking. You see what I'm saying? Alcoholism sometimes includes alcohol. You know what I mean? But that ain't the issue. Alcohol is the symptom. Alcohol is my binky. It's not the problem. The problem is a spiritual malady that manifests itself in self-centered fear. Fear drives the boat. Fear is the master. Fear is an excellent servant. It's a terrible master, right? So when people are like, well, what if it doesn't work? See, I prefer that you be so desperate that alcohol has kicked your ass so sufficiently that we're not having that conversation until you're at least like 120 days sober. That's when the asshole kicks back in, right? At 120 days, the first 120 days, you're like, I'm so grateful. I've never had it so good. Thank you, God, for my life. Yes, I'm happy to work for $7 an hour. I've never been paid so much. Yada. And then 120, 4 months sober, you're like, you see it in every newcomer, myself. Them selfish sons of bitches ain't paying me enough. Don't they know who I am? Just like, bitch, please. You know what I mean? But that's the change. That's how the ego inflates. We don't destroy the ego. The ego gets deflated in this program, and then it inflates again. Isn't that precious? And then it deflates again. So one of my sponsors used to say, pray for humility or get humiliated. There are two very different concepts. Humility is the proper right-sized assessment of one's self. Humility looks like this. I'm pretty good at this. I'm not so good at this. That's humility. Humility is I'm not the worst. Humility is I'm pretty good at that, actually. I'm not very good at that. It's balance. That's what humility is. And without humility, I will get an ass kicking.
Awesome.
Everything I judge, I walk through. Everything I judge, I walk through. That has been my lesson for humility. So I start to be very, very careful in the way that I judge. Because after 29 years and doing some serious judging, I know right around the corner, I'm about to walk through the exact same thing. Because that's how much my God loves me.
Love it. All right, Sam, as we start getting ready to wrap up, do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us?
No, I'd rather answer another question because I don't know what else to say. So I just want to make sure people have been tended to and best
Yeah,
as
let me
possible.
see if there's any other questions here that have come in. No, just a bunch of comments saying thank you and powerful stuff and feedback. So thank you so much. Let me see if I've got another question that I'd like to um,
Just
look
remember,
at
it's a
here.
practice, guys. It's a practice. 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 Practice.
I love it. And oh, one more thought that I had. You said courage is fear that takes action. And I also love, my sponsor told me this recently that really opened my eyes to it. Fear is courage that said its prayers, that's relying on that power greater than
Beautiful.
self. And just really powerful stuff. All right.
Real quick, Justin, too.
Yeah.
I know that there's been to those of you who are sending me stuff in the chat, I don't check the chat while I'm in the meeting. So I'll try to, but please get my number from
Hmm.
Liza or Justin. Text me. I'm happy to speak with you. If you, yeah. So I may not be able to answer the questions in the chat. I know just one came up about speaking again.
Hmm.
So thanks.
Yeah. And once again, if anybody would like to get in contact with Sam, please send an email to reco12pod@gmail.com and I can get you her contact information through there. That way we can get that taken care of. And man, I'm just so grateful for your time and your willingness to do this, Sam. It's been an honor to meet you. And I'm going to follow up with you because there's some things that I think would be really helpful as I'm going to this next phase of some things in my life. So, anyways, thank you so much for a fantastic Rico 12 weekly speaker meeting. And once again, if you out there had questions, additional things that you wanted to get in contact with Sam about, please send an email to reco12pod@gmail.com. I will get you connected. And if you haven't already done so, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's a great way to work your 12 step and get this message out there to more people who just need to hear people like Samantha. I mean, this was powerful, and more people need to hear this message, her experience, strength, and hope. Next Friday, we're scheduled to be hearing from another first time Rico 12 speaker, Jeffrey S. Really grateful for his willingness to come on and speak next week. If you to learn more about that, stay tuned in the WhatsApp community, the email list, the other places that we post these things. All right, now let's launch off into the rest of our day with the third step prayer. Samantha, will you please say that for us?
I'd be honored to. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Amen.
Awesome. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. And when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.